Hello, and thank you for joining us here on this fine, whatever day you're watching this. My name is Nate Manning here with Star Wars Newsnet, and today we are joined by George Mann, author of the recently released The Eye of Darkness, the latest in the High Republic Publishing Initiative, officially kicking off Phase 3 in grand, exquisite fashion, in my personal opinion. So, George, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I just wanted to start off by saying it's a lovely book, and if you guys haven't checked it out yet, highly recommended. If you're not fully caught up on the High Republic, I think you could kind of start off with this if you really wanted. I think George, you set it up in a way that you could jump on. I wouldn't recommend jumping on, but if you really wanted to, you probably could to get away with it. It's probably not the best idea, but you certainly could. But with that being said, let's just get into it with some general stuff first off. So, outside of the High Republic, you've done a whole lot of Star Wars, Myths and
Yep.
Fables, Dark Legends, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, your portfolio is very diverse, but there's things in each of your stories that kind of work together in their own separate ways. So, what types of themes and storytelling elements do you try to incorporate into any type of Star Wars thing that you do?
I think whenever I approach a Star Wars story, I'm very conscious that I want it to feel like Star Wars. For me, tone is everything. I've written for a lot of Star Wars, as you say, and quite a few other franchises as well. And I always find that getting the tone right is the key to it. So, like, the details are important. What color someone's lightsaber blade is and things like that. They are important, but actually the overall tone is the most important thing. Is that I want people to sit down and kind of read something I've written and say, does it feel like a Star Wars story? Yes, it does. And I think there are a few key things that George Lucas did early on that set the tone for Star Wars. So um, so I always try and bring those things into what I'm writing. A sense of mythology and kind of adventure, um, a sense of hope. Um, Stories about family, whether that's biological family or found family. I think these are all elements that kind of help you get a sense that it is a Star Wars story that you're listening to. Um, Saying that, there are, what I always want to try and do when I'm writing for Star Wars is to do something additive. So it's rather than kind of repeating the beats of the past. Those echoes are important, but I always want to try and say something new or add something new to an ongoing story and galaxy that's given me so much over the years. I always feel like that's my role here as a writer, is to say new things, to use that universe to say new things. So that's usually the angle that I'm looking for when I'm sitting down to tell a story. It's like, how do I do something that's gonna help people enjoy this world in a deeper way. And sometimes that can be kind of, let's go deeper into the characters. Sometimes that can be, let's explore a new sector of the galaxy. Sometimes that can be, let's just look at things from a different angle or a different perspective than we've seen them before. I think that's why the Myths and Fables books really kind of came into their own, because we had that. Thanks. Yeah, that idea that there's in-universe stories that have developed over time, and it was so much fun to be able to kind of think about those stories and go, okay, well, there's probably a kernel of truth at the heart of them all. Something definitely happened in the canon sense of it. There is a story there, but it's been told and told and told and retold so many times that it's changed and in the telling, and like stories do in the real world. And that was a lot of fun to be able to kind of go, okay, so it becomes a bit of a game for the reader to be able to go, okay, so what's really going on in this story of this this knight in the desert who's fighting the dragon crate? What really happened there? And of course, in that instance, it's Obi-Wan and a crate dragon, and the Tusken Raiders. So that's been a lot of fun to do. Um, and I think with Eye of Darkness, I know we're going to come on to it, but with
Mhm.
Eye of Darkness, what I wanted to do was really bring a sense of kind of exploring the depths of those characters and where their headspace was in a way perhaps we haven't had a chance to do yet in the
Mhm.
initiative.
So going off of that, every High Republic project is very big, very important. A lot of people care about the High Republic. Obviously, it's gotten much bigger than fair to say, most people probably expected in a lot of ways. So, what was it like to learn that you'd be continuing on with working on the High Republic as Phase 3 begins?
I mean, it's been an honor from start to finish. You know, the process. I say start to finish. I haven't finished yet, but I mean,
Mhm.
you know, in terms of kind of joining that team and being able to contribute and work as part of the kind of the writers' room that we have to develop these stories and take the grand story further forward. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's hugely exciting. You know, I sat down with Mike Seglain from Lucasfilm to discuss various projects that could be potentially be things that I could write for Phase 3. Um, you know, from an early point, we kind of knew that I was going to be doing one of the YA books, but then the opportunity arose for me to write Eye of Darkness, or what then was the first adult novel of the phase, and the book that launches the phase really. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, that comes with a lot of excitement, a little bit of pressure, a bit of nervousness, um, but mainly I think mainly the excitement, the chance of being able to kind of go, okay, I did a lot of work in phase 2 and had a lot of fun. Now I get to really get my teeth into Avar and Elzar and Markion Rowe and Bell and Burry and these characters who've become much loved and who I've come to love as a fan as well. I'd written some shorter works that kind of that fitted in around phase 1 and
Mhm.
adaptations, children's adaptations of things, but I hadn't really got my teeth into those
Right.
characters. So it was kind of like, well, okay, I've had a lot of fun with phase 2. Now I've got to kind of write this book that addresses what's going on with those characters. And I say that came with a bit of kind of a sense of duty, I suppose, to the readership. You want to make sure the way you present those characters feels right and true to the audience, um, and and to do justice to the writers that had written the previous books as well, and the story that they've been telling. So and the story that we all want to tell and move forward with. So yeah, so it was a whole bundle of emotions, to be honest. Mainly excitement, but also that kind of little bit trepidation.
Diving a little bit deeper into Eye of Darkness now, you touched on it a little bit, but so can you go into more explanation in terms of what inspirations that you had as you crafted the book?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a whole bunch of factors again that go into the creation of a book like this. Um, so there's kind of the very personal element of I'm going to write this story, I'm going to tell the story my way, but there's also the collaborative effort that goes into the planning of a story like this as well. So we were working as a team to kind of work out, well, what's going to happen during phase 3, what's going to happen during the adult novels and the YA novels and the middle grade novels and the comics. We plan all of that stuff as a team and discuss it. So where these characters, what their arcs throughout the phase. So there was a lot of work early on for us to sit down in groups. So myself, Tessa, and Charles, who are writing the 3 adult novels, particularly, to kind of thrash out, okay, so what the threads that I'm going to set up for you guys, and okay, I'm going to leave these characters here, so can you make sure you carry them on to this place in your story, and etc. etc. So there was a kind of a lot of that. Um, I mean, I touched on it earlier that one of the main inspirations actually was the previous 3 books in phase 1, and the work that those 3 authors, Charles, Cavan, and Claudia, had all done to present these characters to that point. Um, you know, I I love the High. I was very lucky. I joined the High Republic quite early on in the background. Really, I wrote a Drengir story for the
Mhm.
Target Special Edition of Dark Legends. So I was given access to a lot of the material at that point because Mike already had an idea that he was going to bring me in for phase 2. So instead of just giving me just the Drengir stuff in isolation, he said, "Here you go, read the material. Write the Drengir story. The rest of it might come in useful at some point." So I was getting to read, as a fan, the manuscripts of the novels as they were written, which was a brilliant experience. So I was hugely kind of excited about this new era, the new characters, everything that the original 5 architects had done. And for me, that in itself was a huge inspiration for Eye of Darkness, to go into it and go, okay, I'm now carrying a torch that these guys lit. I want to do justice to that, but also it's inspiring, to make you want to do your best work as well. I suppose the other thing is I read a lot of kind of epic fantasy, actually. There's a particular series I love called The Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson. What he does in those books is he writes these whopping great, like 1,000-page books, and there's 10 of them in the series. But what he does is multiple viewpoint characters. He's dipping into lots of different characters in different situations, and he's a master at kind of pulling those threads together as the book moves on. And I think there was a bit of inspiration there in the way I approached the writing of Eye of Darkness. And I think we've got like 9 viewpoint characters overall, probably 7 major viewpoint characters, and 6 or 7, and then 9 in total. And they're scattered across the galaxy. You've got people on Coruscant, you've got people in the Occlusion Zone, and I think in different camps and different situations. And for me, I was looking at the way that some of my favorite authors had approached those multiple viewpoint books, and particularly Erickson, I think, as I say, is a master at it. So there was a bit of inspiration there in the way I approached this and wrote to write it in that style. It's certainly in the way that we moved around the different characters and how the story pulls together.
Nice. I'll definitely have to look into those. Those sound interesting. And hate to admit it, but one of the holes in my Star Wars bibliography from you is that Drengir story from Dark Legends. So I'll have to go check that out. But in terms of the Drengir, it's funny because when the High Republic first started, we thought they were going to be the big obscure bad for the Jedi. But then that shifted very quickly into the Nameless. And there's a method to my madness for this next question because usually I ask about upcoming projects much later on. But before we get into some more spoilers, some more in-depth conversation on the Eye of Darkness, I wanted to ask you if you could potentially give me one word to describe your next High Republic venture, that young adult novel that you mentioned, Tears of the Nameless.
I think if I had to pick just one, it would be fear. maybe not quite in the way that people will be expecting, but there's a definite theme there.
Yeah, and that's all I really wanted to know because it's still so far out that I really don't want any more context beyond that. But yeah, I can't wait to see you probably dig into more of the Nameless. And the reason why I say there's a method to my madness is because I love the way you approach the Nameless. You mentioned one of your you mentioned your work in phase 2, and for me, one of the more underrated entries in the entire High Republic is your Nameless Terror miniseries. I loved your approach to the Nameless and this kind of Aliens meets Jaws type of vibe, type of horror that you kind of brought to it, and that we didn't see them a lot, but when we did, just chaos all over the place. So the Nameless, minor spoilers here for the Eye of Darkness, but they aren't super present in the Eye of Darkness. So I just wanted to ask, how did you go about translating your approach from the Nameless, from your experience from the Nameless Terror and other places into the Eye of Darkness? How did that whole thing translate?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think with the Nameless Terror, I definitely wanted to do exactly what you said. It's aliens, Jaws. It's a disaster movie.
Mhm.
a base under siege story. You know, they're trapped on this wrecked spaceship, and the Nameless are there. But actually, like you don't see that much of the Nameless in the comic. You do see them,
Mhm.
but
Yeah. Yep.
'cause, you know, we're playing in a visual medium, of course, with a comic. But um, I always think things are more scary when you don't see them that much. I mean, I think that's true of the original Alien movie. In fact, you know, the alien is at its absolute scariest when you're just getting glimpses and moments, you know, where you catch a glimpse of something running down the corridor, or a little
Mhm.
bit of its mouth. You know, um, when you actually see it, um, you know, it becomes a monster movie rather than like the tension. You know, it breaks
Yep.
the tension a little bit. Um, and I think it's important to treat the Nameless a little bit like that at this stage. You know, so and it's similar. You know, I know we're going to talk about Marky and Roll in a little bit, so I'll try not to
Yep.
preempt that too much. But I think I want you to treat the Nameless a bit in the same way as Marky and Row, in that you know, he's you want you to feel his presence in the book, but and throughout everything, you know, he's the architect of everything that's happening in the Eye of Darkness. But you know, he doesn't have a huge amount of screen time, and you hardly see inside his head. And there's a reason for that, because it makes him all the more scary. We'll come back to that when we talk about him. But I think
Yep.
that's true of the Nameless as well. It's like, you know, you don't want to show too much leg, essentially. Um, you know, and I think there's also different a different element to consider, which is, you know, I'm telling part of the story in this book. You know, obviously we're setting up the general trajectory of the phase here, but we have lots of different story strands with the comics, with the YA books, with the middle grade books. Um, that will explore and focus perhaps on different, like we did in phase one, like we did in phase two. You know, focus on different story threads and story elements. So you've got to leave room, not do everything in one book. Got to leave room for other people to come in and play as well.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that you mentioned it. Let's get into some marking on row here. I described him in my review for Star Wars Newsnet as the ultimate boogeyman for the High Republic and the entire galaxy at this point. That there's always a fear of what he could do next. But it's funny because whenever we spend time with him in the Eye of Darkness, he's not really that. You bring out a new side of him I that was very interesting to see you tackle. So why was his own conflict over the things he did in phase one important to showcase for for,
Yeah. So
for this book?
I think Markion is one of the most fascinating villains we've seen in Star Wars. You know, obviously you have Anakin Darth Vader as the kind of the core archetype
Hmm.
of you know, the classic Star Wars villain, and um, he's all about the dark side, you know, and power. Um, and then you have people like Thrawn, who's all about control and, you know, strict order and tactics. What I think Marky and Rowe is all about is chaos. I think, you know,
Hmm.
he is an agent of chaos. Um, and what I really wanted to explore in this book, you know, fundamentally, it's a book about the Jedi and the Republic having lost. You know, we've seen Markion's campaign in the first three books of, you know, within phase one. We've seen Markion's campaign um, to bring the Jedi and the Republic to their knees, and he does it. He does it, you know, and it ends with him bringing Starlight Beacon down into Irum's Ocean. Um, so what we're exploring in you know, is the state of the galaxy where the Jedi have lost, so that, you know, we're diving into their mindset a lot. But I think it was really important to show where Markion's at, because, you know, that he's lost as well. He's lost by winning, and
Hmm.
that's kind of one of the rare moments where in the book where he does let his guard down when he's talking to Gira about how he's feeling about things, and he says, by to win I had to become my enemy, and by becoming my enemy I've lost, because, you know,
Hmm.
his whole shtick is chaos for chaos's sake. You know, that he thrives on the chaos. He doesn't want to be a governor. He doesn't want to rule a sector of space. So he's by bringing up the occlusion zone. Not only has he shut out the Republic, he's also created a prison for himself as well. And you've got Gira in his camp. You know, his lover, in fact, is telling him, no, no, we have to reorganize. We have to become ministries rather than tempests. We have to, you know, rule. We have to, you know, look after these people that we've kind of trapped in the seclusion zone. This is everything you wanted. And you know, Markin's point is it's everything I don't want. In fact, it's the opposite. So I thought that was a really interesting exploration of a villain, to kind of to say, actually, what happens after you've won? What happens after you've got everything you want and it's not satisfying? And I think in some ways that makes Markion even more scary, because, you know, what's he going to do now? What's next? We see it. We get a little glimpse of that. And this is a spoiler for people, but a little glimpse of that when he executes Pratre Vita. You know, broadcast it to the galaxy. He's completely undermining everything that Gira is trying to do there, and he's not doing that because he wants to undermine Gira. He's doing that because he wants chaos. You know, because he doesn't know how to do anything else. That's, you know, he has to keep poking the wound that he's created for the Jedi. But in doing so, he's also poking that wound for himself as well. And that, for me, as I say, that was the key to unlocking this story, actually, as a writer, realizing that, you know, everyone's lost here. It's not just the Jedi who are feeling that despondency and that, you know, and don't know what to do next. Markion's the same. He's basically, him and Elzar are very much a mirror throughout the story. So carry on.
Yeah, it's a very interesting way you approached the book, and how it all was just this kind of like ticking time bomb of sorts for pretty much every main character in the book. And one of those people is, you mentioned just now, Elzar. Elzar, he's had a rough time of things, to say the least, and he's being pulled every which way emotionally. One of the things I see online are, so this is a true this is a two-pronged question. So part one, online I see a lot of comparisons to Elzar to Anakin Skywalker. Do you subscribe to that at all, or do you think of Elzar as some other mythic figure?
I think he's a character in his own right. To be honest, I think he's. I can see there are parallels, and I can understand why people make those connections. But I actually think he's quite different in a lot of ways as well. You know, he's dealing with different problems. You know, a lot of his issues are internalized. He's made mistakes, and he doesn't have someone whispering in his ear like Anakin did. You know, Anakin's downfall for me is he's very much manipulated by Palpatine. You know, who toys with his emotions and pulls him in that particular direction. And you know, that's not to say it's all Palpatine's fault and not Anakin's fault. You know, that Anakin's fault is very much his own fault as well. But I think Elzar's in a different place entirely. I think he's just what I wanted people to feel when they read him in this book was that you know, he's human, and he's you know, the Jedi, they're not superheroes. They're, you know, they can do incredible things, and they're particularly strong when they have each other. Like, you know, the true strength of the Jedi Order is the fact that there is a Jedi Order. They're not individuals, and I think where we join them in this book, and particularly Elzar in this book, is that they're operating more as individuals, because they all have different ideas about what they're at sea. They don't know what to do. Yoda wants to focus on the nameless. You know, the Council have recalled everyone to Coruscant and put the Guardian protocols in place. Elzar wants to go and bang his fists against the occlusion zone until he can break through. You know, everyone's pulling in slightly different directions, and Elzar's struggling with. He blames himself for the fall of Starlight Beacon, for the you know, for what happened with Chancellor Yarrow. He blames himself for Stellan's death as a result of that. He thinks he's the one who's driven Avar away. which couldn't be further from the truth, but he doesn't know that. He doesn't, so he's trying to fill the hole. He's promised the universe he's gonna make up for for Stellan's death by, being as good as Stellan was. He's also trying to fill in for Avar and be a politician and a diplomat, and and the bridge between the Republic and the Jedi Council. And it's breaking him. He's internalizing it all, and it's not that he's falling to the dark side or anything like that. I think it's more that he's struggling with the same thing that a lot of people would struggle with in those circumstances, and that's these people have been through a heck of a lot. They've lost friends and loved ones. They're carrying a very heavy burden, and they don't know what to do. And I think he is an exemplifier of that for me. And the lesson he needs to learn, and it remains to be seen whether he learns it or not. The lesson he needs to learn is that actually being Elzar is enough. He doesn't have to try and be Stellan. He doesn't have to try and be Avar. He has to forgive himself for making mistakes, because everyone makes mistakes, and he needs to just be Elzar, because actually Elzar is what they need is from him, what the galaxy needs from him. And I hope he makes that realization. That's kind of what I was setting up here for him to, hopefully the trajectory he's on remains to be seen.
Yeah, so you just answered kind of the second part of that question. In that, for Elzar, it's not a matter of will he fall to the dark side. It's what does he have to do to center himself and get back on the right path. So, it's a tough road ahead for him.
It absolutely is, and I think that the other part of the answer to that question is what I alluded to before, which is the journey that Avar's on in this book. Actually, it's it's stop trying to be an island and remember that actually it's okay to need people, because you're stronger together. And that's for me, that's what makes the Jedi, the force of good in the galaxy, that they are. And that's what I want them to remember. That's not where they're at the moment, but that's coming together, and that's I say Avar kind of exemplifies that, because that's the journey she's on. She's in the inclusion zone, and she's being very much kind of like, I'm not the hero of Hetzel. I can't live up to that. I'm not the Master of Starlight Beacon. I can't live up to that. I'm just going to be a Jedi and do good things every day. But that's not enough. Those little things she's doing aren't adding up to the big win that she wants. And it's not until she realizes from Bellin the Ugnaught prompting her, and from hearing that message from Elzar, that she realizes, actually, no, I need to step up and be the person I'm supposed to be, and be with the people I'm supposed to be with. I think that's the really fundamental bit. I need to go home and be with everyone. And I think Elzar's, and that's what he needs to learn from Avar.
Yeah, for sure. Real quickly, this wasn't in my rundown of questions, but Baylan, I just got to give him a shout out. I love that little dude. Can you say that we may or may not see him again? Is there any vision you have for Baylan and his future?
Oh, I can't really. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. That's off the top of my head, because that's probably my favorite new character in the book, and yeah, so I really like that little dude, and he definitely grew on me as the book went along.
I'd like to see him carry on and go into other stories, but that would be spoilers, and I'll be careful.
Yep, that's totally fine. Staying along the same lines as thinking big picture. You've touched on it, but you introduced a lot of new things because you kind of had to. This was the first book of Phase 3, so you're pulling in a lot of these grand ideas from the High Republic team and whatnot. And some of those things are characters like Baron Bulin, Yoda, and what's going on with him, and Aslan Rel, that you couldn't necessarily wrap up, but you had to introduce and set up. So I just wanted to ask, can you describe the process of having to balance trying to tell the best version of your story versus playing within the boundaries of this larger High Republic initiative?
Yeah, it's challenging. It's because you have ideas that you think, oh, okay, I could run with this, I could run with that, I could do this with this character and that with that character, um, but then it wouldn't be the book it needs to be.
Mhm.
Because this is one chapter in a big story. You know, um, and yeah, okay, it's an important chapter. It's launching a new phase. It's setting up a new status quo in the galaxy. Um, but I have to share the love, with the rest of the team.
Mhm.
I can't pull all those threads into this book because it would be too much anyway. I mean, I think
Right.
the book would lose focus. Actually, I mean, it's actually quite a chunky book already. It's getting on
Mhm.
for 120,000 words. That's quite a chunky novel, and I think it would have to be twice that long to address all those other threads if we wanted to set that, do more than just set them up or refer to them or have cameos that and that's, I suppose, what I would say is that every choice is purposeful.
Mhm.
So if you're seeing a character like Aslin make an appearance in the book, there's a reason for that. There's a reason he's being introduced at that point, and we're having that kind of sideways look at him. Um, you know, as we know from the comic, from Charles's Shadows of Starlight comic that
Mhm.
Aslin's back, and there's you can infer from that there might be future exploration of that character.
Yep.
Um, but I think actually as I say, it would. I think you've got to remember your role as a storyteller within a team. That's always important because I write original novels of my own as well, and you can do what you want with your characters at that point. Um, but I think the book actually be lesser for trying to do all of that stuff. I think everything we talked about the themes about exploring the two sides of the occlusion zone, and the fact that everyone's lost, and that Mark and Rose lost, and these guys, the Jedi, are lost and the Republic are lost. I think you start to dilute that theme by exploring different elements. If we have characters going off on an adventure facing the nameless, um, or you start delving into what Baron Boolin's doing, or you start worrying about Aslin's what Aslin's doing back at Coruscant. You're starting to move away from those themes.
Mhm.
So I think yeah, it's a balancing act. It's definitely a balancing act, um, and it's a negotiation with the rest of the team to work out. I really want to tell this part of the story. Can I please put that in here? Um, and then we talk about, like, what are you doing with this character? Where does this character need to be for the start of your story? And then you work out what freedom you've got to do things without undermining what the others are writing, because we really want this to feel like a cohesive whole, like we've have had so far. Um, so you've got to be careful not to undermine that.
Yep. And I think, to your point, shifting to the book's final pages, that idea couldn't be more exemplified in how you chose to wrap up this version of the story with Elzar and Avar. And so, given everything that happened, and after everything that's happened in the Eye of Darkness, what's the significance in ending things with that tiny little bit of hope?
Well, I think it's fundamental. I think that's the win. Star Wars is always about hope. We mentioned that earlier when we were
Mhm.
talking about theme. I think that's it's a theme that runs throughout all Star Wars. There's about hope. From the very earliest days of the Rebel Alliance, um, and I think for me here, as I say, the Jedi, they're not in a great place. The Republic aren't in a great place at this point. They've had a whole year and they've not made any real progress. Um, and then until Avar realizes that she needs to be be back on Coruscant, and she needs to be back with the others, and she makes it. And that for me is that moment. It's a rekindling of hope for everyone. It's not just it's like personal for Avar. It's very personal for Elzar as well, but it's actually it's a beacon of hope being lit for the Republic and for the Jedi. It's like it's the win that they needed at that time to actually know we can do this. Look, someone's come home, and they're okay, and we can beat them because we've found a way. And I think it's not a big, like, there's obviously lots of action sequences in the book. There's there's big climactic battles, but it's not like we're going to overthrow the oppressors and take down the storm wall and beat Markin Row type of ending. It's a much more personal ending, but for me that again thematically fitted with what I was doing in the book, being very much a character study of those core characters. And it's like this is the win that's going to have the most emotional payoff, as opposed to just spectacle.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that point there. So wrapping things up, we talked a lot about the Eye of Darkness and the ins and outs, but one of the tiny little things of the book that I really enjoyed. So just broadly speaking, are there any other characters that you'd like to work with in Star Wars or anything like High Republic or not? And why is it the buddy story between Porter Engel and Creighton's son?
Wouldn't that be amazing to be able to tell that story? Yeah. I had a lot of fun seeing that in, actually, because one of the things I really wanted to do was build those links between phase 2 and phase 3. And Porter is that, he's the living kind of him and the general, are the kind of the living embodiment of that link, and that's why I kind of thought there's little memories about Creighton, because I enjoyed writing Creighton in Battle of Jedha. I think my answer would have been Sabine Wren, as someone who she's one of my favorite characters, and I've always wanted to write Sabine. And now that she's back on our screens again, I don't want to write her. I want to watch. As a fan, I want to see how her story evolves. It's like while she was lying fallow and no one was using her, I was like, come on, let me write some Sabine stories. But actually now that there's a bigger picture developing, I really enjoyed Ahsoka, and I want to see where that story goes. So I think I've been very lucky because I wrote a lot of short stories across the 3 Myths and Fables volumes. I got to touch on a lot of the elements that I wanted to, like the Inquisitors or Darth Vader or Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan. I've been very lucky to be able to write a lot of the characters. I think the thing I'd probably most like to do is to revisit the Pathfinders, actually. I think there's a lot of Salandra Show particularly, and Rupa, and Rock and Corran from the Nameless Terror. I think they, there's a lot to be said for a lot of adventure to be had with that setup, that idea of 2 Jedi and a little Republic team out on their own in the frontier, trying to kind of meet new people and create and map new hyperspace routes and discover new worlds. I think there's a host of adventures that could be written there. So I think that's what I would go back to if I could go anywhere. That would be it.
Yeah, I would have tons of fun revisiting some of those phase 2 elements like Salandra and Rupert and some of those other people that you mentioned. So I don't know, closing things out, any last closing thoughts on the Eye of Darkness or anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'd just like to thank people for supporting the books, supporting the High Republic in general, and for getting out there and reading it. And the response to Eye of Darkness has been absolutely overwhelming this last week. And thank you to everyone who's read the book or is reading the book or intends to read the book. That's why we do what we do. So it's rewarding to see people are enjoying it.
Yeah. So where can people find you online if they want to discuss really anything?
Yeah, probably Instagram is probably the best place. It's probably where I'm most frequently found these days. Okay. It's at George Mann Author. All as one word.
All All right. Well, if you guys have stuck around this long, with me and George's chat about Star Wars and the Darkness and all that stuff, thank you guys for watching, and hopefully found something really cool in here that you might want to tell your friends, and hope to get into the High Republic yourselves if you're not already. So with that, thank you guys, and we will see you guys next time.